Greetings, dear viewers. This is the Cross Moda channel. In this episode, I want to tell you about flying motorcycles, or, as they're known in English, hoverbikes. I'll tell you about their history, concepts, some examples, and we'll talk a bit about their problems and safety, along with some designs that are quite familiar to us. In this video, we'll also look at flying car concepts and prototypes that frankly look like UFOs. In general, it should be interesting. Brew some tea, grab some snacks, and get comfortable in front of your monitor. We're starting. Humanity has always strived with varying degrees of success to go farther and higher. There are legends, myths, tales, and stories about people's attempts to overcome Earth's gravity. Ancient gods could move through the air in their chariots, and some even without any devices. More realistic historical examples include Leonardo da Vinci, the Montgolfier brothers, and other engineers, as well as enthusiasts passionate about their ideas, such as the American Wright brothers. The story began with them, the modern era of aircraft construction. As with any technology, the efficiency of flying machines increased over time, and designers gained more opportunities to create new, often revolutionary means of air transportation. And perhaps the idea of a compact, individual flying vehicle began to excite the minds of engineers and science fiction writers as soon as it became clear that heavier-than-air designs were capable of flight. The term aero motorcycle basically means a flying motorcycle, an ultralight aircraft designed to carry one or two people, or possibly an equivalent payload. In modern terms, we are most likely to imagine a device with a certain number of propellers or jet engines, and a rider sitting on this marvel as if on a classic motorcycle. However, when I dug into historical materials, I was simply amazed by what I saw. There have been such bold attempts to create aero motorcycles that you can't help but be astonished. To begin with, let's get acquainted with the founders of the theory and practical implementation of vertical takeoff and landing aircraft. The development of vertical takeoff and landing aircraft began in 1909 by the Russian engineer Boris Grigorievich Lutsky. The second one I have in mind is the Romanian aviation pioneer Henri Coanda. In fact, you could talk about Henri for a very long time, even doing a separate segment at least an hour long. What's important for us to know is this. Henri Coanda built the world's first airplane with a jet propulsion system, and more importantly for today's topic, developed the concept of a saucer-shaped lifting wing with a centrally located propeller. Another design for vertical takeoff and landing aircraft with a disc-shaped lifting body and a fan located inside it was proposed by academician Boris Nikolaevich Yuryev in 1921. And the first multicopter that managed to successfully lift off the ground was built in 1922 by the Russian-American aircraft designer Georgy Botezat. The drawback of the first such machines was the complex transmission system, which sent power from a single engine to several propellers. The invention of the tail rotor and the swash plate put an end to these attempts. New developments of multicopters began somewhere in the 1950s, but things did not progress beyond prototypes. Of course, you might be outraged right now. Hey, come on. Why the heck do we need these aviation pioneers? Come on, tell us about those oversized quadcopters already. However, what was I getting at in this part of the story? The point is that the main principles of aerodynamics were established pretty soon after the first flight by the Wright brothers at the beginning of the 20th century, and physics, damn it, hasn't changed one bit in 100 years. And, as it will turn out at the end of the story, most of the lawnmowers with propellers we've looked at are only capable of raising rivers, hype, and the pilot's adrenaline level for about 20 minutes at most. But to set the record straight, we need to get acquainted with the flying motorcycles history has given us. Of course, I don't intend to list them all. Just over a dozen will be enough for us. Based on the concept of a disc-shaped wing with an impeller inside, the Canadian company Avro Aircraft began research in 1955 on a jet-powered vertical takeoff craft with a round disc-shaped body and a device for creating an air cushion during takeoff. It was assumed that such a design, with lift fans powered by a turbojet engine, proposed in 1947 by the English designer John Frost. Thanks to the use of an air cushion, it would require less power during takeoff than conventional jet aircraft with vertical takeoff and landing. In 1959, under a contract with the U.S. Army and Air Force, the construction of an experimental VTOL aircraft with a disc-shaped body was completed. It received the official designation and name VZ-9V Aerocar, but it is better known as the Flying Saucer, the first of its kind. The first tests of the VZ-9V began on December 5, 1959. It made short tethered flights and was soon transferred for testing at Edwards Air Force Base. The first takeoff with transition to horizontal flight was made on May 17, 1961. Subsequent tests of the VZ-9V Aerocar VTOL aircraft showed that it did not have sufficient stability. In addition, constant malfunctions in its power plant and control system led to the termination of its tests despite the widely advertised prospects for its use. The project was closed. And here is another crazy machine, less like a UFO, from the mid-1950s called the HZ-1 Aerocycle, a personal helicopter developed by the Lechner Helicopters. The device was commissioned by the American military, who intended to provide their soldiers with a convenient means of transportation. The Aerocycle was a platform with two counter-rotating rotors attached underneath, each with a blade length of 2.3 meters. They were powered by a 4-cylinder engine with 43 horsepower. According to the company's specialists, the aircraft could reach speeds of up to 105 km/h, carry 55 kilonewtons of payload in addition to the pilot, and stay in the air for an hour. The prototype made its first tethered flight on November 22, 1954, and in January 1955, the first free flight took place. The tests were conducted by professional pilot Selmer Sandby, who volunteered for this madness. After the machine logged more than 15 hours over a total of 160 flights, the tests were considered promising enough, and the U.S. Army ordered a dozen units. His longest flight lasted 43 minutes. There were also some incidents. Several times the blades of the two rotors touched each other, which led to their deformation and loss of control over the aircraft. It was assumed that anyone could operate the Aerocycle after a 20-minute briefing. However, these were just pipe dreams of senior military officials. Sandby himself was very doubtful about this. The huge blades posed a danger that could frighten a person even though the pilot's position was secured with safety belts. The engineers were never able to solve the technical problems, and in the end, the project was shut down. Out of the 12 personal helicopters that were ordered, only one survived. It is on display in one of the American museums. By the way, Selmer Sandby received the Distinguished Flying Cross for his service and participation in the HZ-1 tests. And here is the story of a machine created by Paul Moller. But don't rush to admire him just yet. Paul started his work on a disc-shaped lightweight flying vehicle back in the 1960s. He was already promoting his Disco J project in 1974, with certification and a planned production start in 1976. However, in that same year, 1976, the engineer only published photos of a model with 8 engines, a central bubble, and a low tail fin. The Disco J never appeared, although the later M200X looks very similar to it. The M200EX is essentially a prototype flying saucer, just like the later Volantor and New Era. Moller claimed a top speed of 160 kilometers per hour and a flight range of 300 kilometers. The rotors are powered by 8 Wankel engines with low emissions. Running on a mixture of 70% bioethanol and 30% water, M200X VVV, the proposed production version of the M200. M200XGNDRA, M220, which is considered certified for flight above the E-FADI-AA limit at 3 meters altitude. Also, Paul has developed a prototype flying car, the Skycar M400. The funny thing is that for more than 50 years, Paul Moller has been stringing his supporters along with promises. Not a single prototype has gone into mass production yet. Moller and his team claim that more than 200 test flights of the M200G New Era have already been conducted, although these flights are based on ground effect. Moller predicted that the M200G would be ready for sale by early 2008 with the goal of producing 250 units per year, but this did not happen. According to the company, depending on demand, the M200G could cost around $100,000 in the US. The latest information is that Paul showed the prototype M200G New Era, which demonstrated the ability to fly outside of ground effect. However, Moller has not provided any evidence to confirm the promised specifications. Moller's promise that the appearance of the miracle was just around the corner turned out to be fiction year after year. In 2009, the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission filed a lawsuit against Moller. In general, this story really reminded me of the Miracle Motor Wheel by Duyunov and other similar projects aimed at gullible citizens. And over the years, Moller managed to attract more than $200 million in investments for his project. An amazing plan.
Walter, just awesome, if I understood correctly.
The first real hoverbike was introduced in 2006 by New Zealand inventor Chris Malloy. In fact, Malloy's hoverbike is a single-seat quadcopter that has 2 front and 2 rear rotors with partial overlap. Subsequently, Chris Malloy founded his aviation company Malloy Aeronautics, which is based at White Waltham Airfield, southwest of London, United Kingdom. The company is responsible for the commercial development and production of the hoverbike. This design differs from the first one by having half the number of propellers. By the way, the vehicle was shown at the 2015 Paris Motor Show. The hoverbike is made of carbon fiber and aluminum and is powered by a 1,170 cc gasoline engine. And, judging by the photos, it's a BMW Boxer engine. It is claimed that the aircraft can reach speeds of up to 150 km per hour, and its flight range is 100 km. At the same time, the practical ceiling is 3 km, and the maximum useful load is 130 kg. You can already buy the hoverbike now for $40,000. The only caveat is that you will be buying a test device. By doing so, you will help Chris with statistical data. This will speed up preparing the device for mass production. By the way, what are the statistics on accidents among test pilots? Chris Malloy, however, is full of optimism and believes that small batches of hoverbikes can be produced in the coming years, and then larger-scale production can be established. Judging by the official website of Malloy Aeronautics, Chris is actively promoting his developments among military agencies, rescue services, and extreme sports enthusiasts. His company also manufactures unmanned drones. Another interesting hoverbike called the Multicopter was developed by the Hungarian company Bay Zoltán nonprofit. Initially, the organization was a mix of an institute and a foundation, which were established in 1992 with the goal of technological development supported by the government. In 2011, the organization was transformed from a foundation into a nonprofit company. The flight tricopter was developed by Robert Kovacs from Hungary. The FlyKey technology demonstrator has an open cockpit, a maximum speed of 100 kilometers per hour, a payload of up to 100 kilograms, a flight time of 30 to 40 minutes, 6 propellers, batteries as a power source, and fixed landing gear. The device weighs about 250 kilograms and is capable of ascending to a height of 30 meters. The cost came out to around $200,000. The company made its first flight on March 7, 2015, at the Miskolc airfield in the northeast of Hungary. On April 30, 2015, the copter made its first manned flight lasting more than 1 minute. At the time, the press made quite a stir about the Hungarians' development. And now, according to information from their website, a startup called By Gravity has been founded, which is developing the Flight 2 prototype, and they are trying to set up small-scale production with the help of venture capital. And here is the story of a startup that involves engineers from Russia, the USA, Ukraine, Israel, and Latvia. Hoversurf. The first public demonstration of the flying motorcycle Scorpion 1 took place in June 2016 in Skolkovo. The spectacle couldn't be called exciting. The hoverbike with the pilot, to restrained applause, took off into the air several times, reaching a height of no more than a meter. However, a year and $2 million later, the more advanced Scorpion 3 flew along the Moscow Raceway track and then was showcased during tests in Dubai. Scorpion 3 has the following specifications. Maximum speed is 100 km per hour. Safe flight altitude is 5 meters above the ground. Each engine has a power of 33 kiloballers. The battery is lithium manganese nickel with a capacity of 12.3 kilowatt. Actual flight time is from 10 to 25 minutes. The price of the Scorpion 3 hoverbike is $150,000. Right now on screen, you are seeing a very unusual device, the Lazareth LMV 496. It's unique because it can drive on roads like a quad bike, and with the press of a button, it transforms into a hoverbike in 60 seconds. The device, developed by French engineer Ludovic Lazareth, weighs 140 kilograms. At the center of each wheel, there's a jet-cut jet turbine spinning at 96,000 revolutions per minute. The invention was tested by his friend Vanessa at a height of 21 meters. The estimated price is $560,000. That's for a machine that doesn't drive well on roads or take off into the air easily. The guys from Jetpack Aviation, known for making jetpacks, also came up with a concept for a flying motorcycle powered by jet propulsion. But unlike Lazareth, they didn't try to mash together two incompatible machines. It is claimed that the speeder can accelerate up to 240 km per hour fly at an altitude of up to 1.5 kilometers, but the flight time is limited to 30-40 minutes, after which it needs to refuel. It's also worth mentioning the recently hyped Hoverbikes, JetCut, Sun 1, and X Turismo Hoverbike. And now I'll show you a few different concepts of lightweight flying vehicles. Jetman, or Jetwing, is essentially a jet-powered winged backpack developed by Yves Rossi. One of the features of the project is the complete absence of wing mechanization. The flying vehicle is controlled by shifting the center of mass. In Yves Rossi's flying device, the wing is rigidly attached to the back, and the pilot controls the flight only by moving his arms, legs, and head. At the same time, the maneuverability is sufficient to perform advanced aerobatic maneuvers. At first, the flying device was not designed for takeoff from the ground. However, as early as December 2019, Yves Rossi tested an improved model of the jet suit, which allows for vertical takeoff and landing. A parachute is used for safety. In addition to the landing and reserve parachutes, Yves Rossi's wing is also equipped with its own parachute, which ensures a soft landing in case it needs to be jettisoned. The 2012 model backpack weighs 55 kilograms when fully fueled, which is 30 liters of kerosene. The wingspan is 2 meters. The maximum speed is 300 kilometers per hour. The flight duration with a full tank is 10 minutes. But now the performance has improved. The speed and flight duration have increased. The second unconventional device is the Opener Blackfly, an American personal vertical takeoff and landing aircraft with an electric drive developed by Canadian engineer Marcus Lane. It was publicly unveiled in 2018 after 9 years of development. The manufacturer claims that this is the world's first ultralight, fully electric, fixed-wing aircraft with vertical takeoff and landing. The first experimental version was launched by Lane on October 5, 2011. The aircraft is made of carbon fiber reinforced epoxy resin and has a fully electric battery-powered propulsion system. It also has 2 cantilever tandem wings, each 4 meters 15 centimeters long, located at the front and rear of the short fuselage. The Opener Blackfly boasts a weight of 142 kilograms, is capable of carrying 110 kilograms of payload, has a flight range of 60 kilometers, a maximum altitude of 570 meters, and a speed of 130 kilometers per hour. The main difference between the last 2 examples of flying vehicles is the presence of a wing. And now we can confidently move on to discussing the main problems of flying motorcycles. It should be noted right away that the aerodynamics and dynamics of most modern hoverbikes use the physics of helicopter flight with 2 or more lifting rotors. And this immediately puts experimental models into the hangar of forgotten personal transportation inventions. And that's because the lift generated by a supporting wing is not used, as was done by the great aircraft designers of the past. Moreover, the ground effect at low altitude is not used either, which increases payload and speed with low engine power, because this is important and relevant. This allows for energy savings, but as it is, the average hoverbike spends most of its energy overcoming gravity instead of using aerodynamic surfaces to glide through the air and spending the main portion of energy on forward movement. That's exactly why I gave you Jetwing and Opener Blackfly as examples. And then you're like, oh wait, are you saying that all these electric meat grinders are just smoke and mirrors? It's a scam, but we were told, just wait a couple of years and we'll all be flying. We'll forget about potholes on the roads, and it will be easier for the road services. Friends, let's take off our rose-colored glasses. Modern, fuel-efficient internal combustion engines and electric motors are so powerful that they can lift any flying vehicle into the air using vertical takeoff. Well, but this power and efficiency are being used as if it were still the last century. Most enthusiasts don't study the technical side or aerodynamics, and instead, using a pseudoscientific approach, build mediocre models. Even the Kalashnikov concern is trying its hand at building an ultralight personal vertical takeoff and landing aircraft in the field of hoverbikes. Oh, what a load of crap this all is. What's the point? Almost everyone makes the same mistakes when building a multi-rotor helicopter. They have huge drag, there's no airframe. The fuel or battery power only lasts for about 20 to 30 minutes. You might object again. Hold on. Very soon they'll develop miracle nano batteries with huge capacity and will be able to fly for days. Guys, when they develop them, then we'll talk. The flight safety of modern hoverbikes is at a very low level. Yes, various electronic control and pilot assistance systems are being implemented there. But let's be honest. Current hoverbikes don't have the grace of a road motorcycle or even an airplane. Their flight resembles the uncertain first steps of a child. If one or more propellers fail, the situation can lead to injuries or even death for the pilot. To use an emergency parachute, you need enough altitude for it to deploy, At a height of 20 or 30 meters, it's absolutely useless. Let's imagine a hypothetical situation. Humanity has solved most of the problems with flying motorcycles. They have become safe, fly for a long time, and are graceful. They even put covers on the propellers so that no one accidentally gets chopped up. They started mass production of them and sell millions every year. Now think about it. How do you organize the safe movement of this crowd of hoverbikes in three-dimensional space? Right now, humanity is barely managing to organize safe movement on a flat surface, that is, in two coordinates, but it's very difficult. And unfortunately, thousands, even tens of thousands of people die on the roads every year. Now try to imagine the challenges and difficulties of managing vehicle movement in three-dimensional space. Can you imagine that? So, guys, that's our talk about hoverbikes or flying motorcycles. This industry is still quite young and has a lot of problems and unresolved issues. The industry is very interesting. I completely understand how many people dream of flying on something like that. I wouldn't mind it myself. But at the moment, I don't see any reasons why in 10 or 20 years this type of transport would become widespread and in demand. First of all, the military will definitely take an interest in it, if they haven't already. In fact, some modern hoverbikes already meet their requirements. It's also possible they could be used by rescue services or the police, and also in various types of extreme entertainment. That's how it is. I hope you found the video interesting and useful. Thanks so much for watching. You can support my work, as always, by subscribing to my channel and sharing the video with others. You can also support me financially using the details in the pinned comment. This has been the CrossMoto channel. See you next time.